At the engagement banquet, my boyfriend's sister wore the exact same dress as me. Brother, who's prettier, me or her? Before my boyfriend could answer, her mother grabbed a glass of red wine and splashed it on me. Either change immediately or leave this place at once. Wow, this mother-in-law is truly formidable and bold. Here we go. High quality, captivating novels are in abundance. Pumpkin stories dominate half the world. The whole novel will be updated in one go. The exciting story begins now. On the day of my master's graduation, Song Bai proposed to me. Nguyen, I finally waited for you to graduate. For the sake of all these years, I've stayed faithful to you. Please say yes to me. He knelt down on one knee, a bouquet of flowers in one hand, a diamond ring in the other. His gaze was warm and clear. A crowd had already gathered around us, whistling and cheering loudly. Say yes, marry him. Tears welled up in my eyes. I shyly extended my hand. The word yes was about to escape my lips when a cake landed squarely on my face. Sweet cream instantly covered my eyes. The surroundings fell silent. Little Ked jumped out like a rabbit. Sister, surprise! It was him against Su Zhaokei, Su Bai's younger sister, my future sister-in-law. Rumor had it that Su Luobai's grandmother adored her, spoiling her beyond reason. The Su family was well off, and she had a bit of a spoiled princess attitude. I endured it all. But the way she looked at Su Luobai was far too sticky and intense. It made me extremely uncomfortable. I knew she wasn't Su Luobai's biological sister. She was only an adopted daughter of the Su family. This discomfort peaked at that moment. I also had an older brother. I knew very well the kind of affection a sister has for her brother. It was absolutely nothing like hers. Su Zhaokei's intentions were definitely not pure. Unfortunately, all I had was a woman's intuition. No evidence. If I spoke up without cause, it would only make me seem petty. At this moment, Su Zhaokei blinked her wide eyes, smiling innocently like an angel. But Su Bai's expression wasn't nearly as pleasant. He grabbed her and yanked her away. In a low voice, he questioned her, his tone harsh. Su Zhaokei, have you lost your mind? Did a donkey kick your brain? At Su Bai's outburst, Su Zhaokei's eyes instantly filled with tears, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. She tugged at Su Bai's sleeve, shaking it pitifully. Brother, I just wanted to wish sister a happy birthday. Alright, my fault. What bad luck for me that today happened to be my birthday too. But even so, you do have a brain and eyes, don't you? Was throwing a cake at this moment really appropriate? And if you say it wasn't intentional, I wouldn't believe you even if I were beaten to death. I was so furious my teeth hurt. I silently praised myself for holding it in. Su Luobai took a tissue to wipe the cream from my face. His expression still dark but restrained. Not only is your brain failing, but are your eyes not working either? Couldn't you see I was proposing? Brother, you actually scolded me. You've never yelled at me before. I didn't know why he suddenly turned his head and pursed his lips. Her watery eyes looked at me pitifully. You must be saying that on purpose to keep sister from being upset. Sister, you're not mad, are you? We young people always play like this. In my mind, 1,000 galloping horses thundered by. At the graduation ceremony, during the proposal, not only was my face covered in cream, ruining my makeup, but my dress was also stained with splotches. Could anyone be in a worse situation than me? But I couldn't even get angry. If I got mad, it would only show I was petty. Unable to take a joke. We young people always play like this. Was that a subtle jab at my age? One sentence and she dug to pits for me to fall into. I had to admit, this little sister had some tricks up her sleeve. I silently rolled my eyes 100 times in my heart, feeling as if I were standing in a lush green tea garden in Yunnan, while pondering how to deal with her. A middle-aged woman suddenly pushed her way out of the crowd. She picked up the fallen cake from the ground, and, without saying a word, slammed it directly onto Su Zhaokei's face. Things happened so quickly. By the time Su Zhaokei reacted, her face was already covered in cream. The middle-aged woman had clearly used considerable force. When she let go, the entire cake base was still plastered to Su Zhaokei's face. Haha, for some inexplicable reason, I felt an odd sense of satisfaction. What's that saying again? Heaven always finds a way to deal with trouble. This time, Su Zhaokei couldn't hold back. She started wailing loudly. "Mom, what are you doing?" She called the woman mom, which meant the woman before me was my future mother-in-law. Stunned, I turned back to look at Su Luobai. Su Luobai gently squeezed my palm, winking at me playfully. Then he leaned in and lightly licked the cream off my face. In front of everyone, he whispered in my ear, "Wife, you're so sweet." My face felt like it was on fire. I hurriedly pushed him away a little. Luckily, everyone's attention was still on Su Zhaokei. No one noticed how shameless Su Bai was acting. "You said young people play like this, didn't you?" Well, as an old lady, I thought I'd try to keep up with the trends too. Su's mom wore a smile on her face, but her eyes carried a chilly sharpness. "What's the matter, Zhaokei? Are you upset? Can't you even take a joke? So petty, aren't you?" Ha ha, walking the green tea path, leaving no way out for the green tea. In my heart, I silently cheered 666. Su Zhaokei stammered, unable to find the words for a long moment. Finally, she forced a tight smile and muttered, "Upset, of course not. Today is sister's big day. I'm just thrilled for her." She managed a faint smile and tugged on Su Bai's sleeve again. "Help me wipe it off." Su Bai didn't even glance at her, not lifting his eyelids once. He coldly refused. "The tissues are for your sister-in-law. Buy your own pack." I looked down at the pack of tissues in my hand, holding back a laugh. Su Zhaokei lifted her teary eyes to me, gazing pitifully. "Sister, I was just joking with you. How could you let my brother treat me like this?" But I hadn't said a single word. And why is it that only you can joke around, while others can't? I wanted to snap back at her, but considering my position, I held back. Instead, I pretended to play dumb. "Zhaokei, my face is big. This little bit of tissue isn't enough." A flash of coldness crossed Su Zhaokei's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. She was about to start again. "Zhaokei, enough is enough." Su Bai's expression turned unpleasant, staring coldly at her. "If it weren't for your constant stunts, we might already have a child by now." "Enough!" I lowered my head in embarrassment, feeling my face heat up. "If it weren't for your antics, I might already be a grandmother by now." Su's mom chimed in, agreeing without hesitation. As she shot a glance at Su Zhaokei, she quickly turned her gaze to me. My legs instantly felt weak, and a wave of nervousness swept over me. Imagine how I looked at that moment. My carefully styled hair smeared with cream, strands plastered to my scalp, my face and body covered in sticky white stains. Bees and other buzzing creatures, drawn by the smell, had already begun to arrive. 3 kinds of exotic plants were involved. Others meet their future in-laws as brides. I arrived as a smelly bride. Sweat trickled from my nervous palms, and I unconsciously shrank behind Su Bai. Su's mom looked at me for a while, and then suddenly smiled. Turns out some things depend on the person. There really are people who look good even with cream on their faces. My eyes widened in disbelief, panicking as I tried to greet her with a polite "Hello, Auntie," but I was so flustered that when I opened my mouth, I blurted out, "Hello, Mom." Laughter erupted among the surrounding classmates. "Auntie is so cool. Champion of justice. Green tea's nemesis." Su Zhaokei stomped her feet in fury, shot me a vicious glare, and stormed off angrily. Su's mom was overjoyed, almost moved to tears. After composing herself slightly, she immediately removed the jade bracelet from her wrist insisting on giving it to me. Zenon, I just came to join the fun today and didn't prepare any gifts. Take this for now. I'll make it up to you later. Though I didn't know much about jade. One glance at its creamy white luster made it clear it was extremely valuable. I was momentarily overwhelmed, thinking I didn't prepare anything either. It was really just a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean to earn a bracelet. I frantically declined, glancing toward Suluobai for help. To my surprise, the rascal accepted it with ease, sliding the bracelet onto my wrist with casual grace. It's from Mom. Just take it. Why be so polite? He stared at me for a moment, before turning to Sue's mom with a cheeky grin. Mom, how's that? My wife is sweet, isn't she? Sue's mom promptly kicked him on the backside. You rascal. You're useless at most things. But your taste in wives is impeccable, on par with your father's. How was I supposed to respond to that? The surrounding classmates erupted into laughter once again. Auntie Si-nuon is truly amazing. She's a recognized academic star in our school, and she has such a wonderful personality. Plus, she's a fantastic cook. A chorus of voices chimed in, painting me as the perfect woman. I even started to suspect they were all actors I'd hired without knowing. Sue's mom listened with great interest, while Suluobai stood beside her, nodding and smiling like a proud fool. He looked like the dim-witted son of a rich landlord. This scene was getting way too over the top. I curled my toes awkwardly, mentally performing the 6th exercise of the 3rd set of exercises 800 times. By the end of the commotion, Sue's mom's expression changed, and she grabbed my hand again, giving me another bracelet. After everything settled down, I went to the restroom to freshen up. Sue's mom suggested we all go to the Sue family home for a meal. In fact, we had already agreed to visit them. But looking at my current disheveled state, it was hardly the right time to meet anyone. Suluobai wrapped his arm around me, telling Sue's mom, I'll take Nuanuan to buy a few outfits first. Sue's mom raised an eyebrow and smiled lightly. I've been waiting for you to say that. If you didn't have even a shred of emotional intelligence, you wouldn't deserve to be human. This mom is too adorable. I had been worried she might think I was being overly dramatic. Don't be upset, Zenuan. Today must have been frustrating for you. But rest assured, your dad and uncle are just as easygoing. They'll never let you suffer any grievances in the future. She held my hand tightly, her face full of sincerity. Meanwhile, Subai shamelessly leaned closer to me. So, Nuanuan, will you marry me? I promise it'll be a decision you won't regret. This mother and son flanked me from both sides, showering me with sweet words. To an outsider, it might even look like I had been abducted. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly harmonious. Such a considerate boyfriend, and such a bold, charismatic future mother-in-law. It was hard not to be moved. Auntie Mubai was just saying. Out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly noticed someone. In the distance, hopping around like a grasshopper, was Su Zhaokei. Who else could it be? I'm not exaggerating. She was literally bouncing as she ran towards Subai, probably thinking it made her look cute and youthful. But she clearly forgot about her own position. The moment she started running, you could almost feel the ground beneath her groaning in protest. Both Suluobai and Sue's mom immediately darkened their expressions. Sue's mom wore a face of utter despair, as if lamenting the misfortune of her family. It was oddly amusing, yet Su Zhaokei seemed completely oblivious. She tugged at Suluobai's sleeve, speaking in a syrupy, coquettish tone. Brother, I'm hungry. I want to eat at that Western restaurant you used to take me to. You used to treat me so well. But now that you have sister, you don't have time for me anymore. This had to be a deliberate disruption, right? I couldn't help but suspect she had planted a surveillance device on me. Otherwise, how did she always show up at the perfect moment? Hearing her slyly manipulative words, I got goosebumps all over. Su Zhaoke was clearly skilled at the art of green tea manipulation. No sooner had she finished acting spoiled than she burst into tears, the kind of tears accompanied by a smile, looking both resilient and heartbreaking. You used to say that if I grew up and no one wanted me, you'd marry me. Oh my goodness, what kind of explosive news was this? What did she mean by saying that? Was she implying no one wanted her now? If no one wanted her, why should her brother marry her? Her brother wasn't a garbage collector. I was silently fuming inside. Looking at Sulu Boy, I teased sarcastically. Sulu Boy, you really know how to play the field, huh? She's just grown up. And you've already moved on so quickly? Sulu Boy's face turned bright red. He was so flustered he almost swore to the heavens. I never said that. Whoever said it is the real fool. I can vouch for that. Su's mom declared, her expression righteous as she looked at me. Sulu Obai seized the lifeline, throwing flirtatious winks at me like crazy. Well, no need to explain further. I replied casually, I was just joking. But I did secretly hope this could serve as an opportunity for Subai to see through his sister's true intentions. Su's mom poked Subai's forehead with her finger. You rascal! When you were a kid, you'd see any little girl and say you'd marry her. I can remember the names of at least 10 or so of them. Where's the fool now? Then Su's mom abruptly shifted her tone, reminiscing about Zhaoke's childhood. When you were in your split pants phase, you'd say all kinds of silly things. Split pants, that was certainly a long time ago. Su Zhaoke's face turned red, seemingly embarrassed. Su's mom continued to escalate with a grin. Do you remember? When you were little, you used to insist you wanted to marry Big Bear? Big Bear, Suluo Bai leaned close to my ear and whispered. Big Bear was the dog we used to keep. My dad gave it away. PFFT, I couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. It did sound like quite a pity. Su Zhaoke's expression froze. She couldn't keep up the act any longer. Turning to Su's mom, she angrily exclaimed, Mom, those were just childhood jokes. Why are you bringing this up in front of an outsider? Wasn't it you who brought it up first? Subai showed no mercy and retorted bluntly. Outsider, where's the outsider here? Take a good look. This is my wife. Mom's daughter-in-law. Stop calling her sister this and sister that. Call her sister-in-law already. Who said I'd marry you? I haven't agreed yet. Su Zhaoke widened her eyes, looking like she wanted to devour me alive. Why should I call her that? She's not even worthy of you. How can she be good enough for you? Su Zhaoke, the Su family has already done so much for you. Stop thinking about things you shouldn't. Even Su's mom could see through Su Zhaoke's little schemes. Indeed, a woman's intuition is reliable. Su's mom's words were sharp, and Su Zhaoke's face turned visibly embarrassed. I wasn't thinking anything. I just don't think she's good enough for my brother. Theft, your brother's not a key being duplicated. Since when do you decide if someone's good enough? Su's mom was ready to lose her temper, but I quickly stopped her. Auntie, it's fine, really. If she doesn't want to call me, then don't force her. Whether she calls me or not, I'll still marry your son. Do I need her approval for that? Su's mom patted my shoulder, smiling warmly. Nuenuin is so sensible. Someone who's educated is truly different. Well-mannered and graceful. I smiled on the surface, but my peripheral vision caught Su Zhaoke again. Subai had told me before. She didn't even take the college entrance exams. She was sent abroad for half a year, but ended up coming back in disgrace, a complete failure. She claimed she couldn't get used to foreign food. Su's mom's words clearly had another layer of meaning. Su Zhaoke, holding back tears, twisted her clothes so tightly they were wrinkled, but she couldn't say a single word. Su's mom grabbed her by the collar and dragged her away. Subai, grinning, leaned close to me. Darling, where should we go? Someone take this dog of a man away and execute him. I deliberately kept a straight face, ignoring him on purpose. Su Zhaokei had always been openly hostile toward me. Before, it could be explained as a sister's possessiveness over her brother, but just now in front of me, she had even brought up her childhood of wearing split pants. That crossed the line into something disgusting. Su Luobai might genuinely treat her as a sister, but Su Zhaokei clearly didn't want to be just his sister. Her intentions were obvious, and the Su family definitely knew. Otherwise, they wouldn't treat her like that. Even with the protective guise of being the sister, I couldn't confront her directly. It was so infuriating. I could only vent my frustration on Su Bai. After all, he was the one with the ridiculously attractive face, radiating charm at every moment. Annoyingly, Su Bai held me close, pulling me a bit tighter into his embrace. "Wife, I'll confess. I'll tell you everything." He laid everything out truthfully, and I finally understood just how troublesome this sister really was. It turned out Su Zhaokei wasn't even a close relative of the Su family. Her grandmother had helped Su's grandmother years ago. So when both of her parents passed away, and her grandmother passed as well, Su's grandmother decided to take her in, and even forced Su's mom to adopt her as a foster daughter. Over the years, it was always Su's grandmother who took care of her, never letting Su's mom interfere. The Su family lacked nothing, and Su's grandmother spoiled her endlessly. As a result, Su Zhaokei was pampered beyond repair. Su's mom, unable to tolerate how much disgrace she brought to the family, tried to discipline her a few times, but to no avail, and even managed to offend the grandmother in the process. In the end, she decided to just look the other way, only throwing money at the problem, satisfying the grandmother's desire to repay a debt of gratitude. As Su Zhaokei grew older and reached the age to marry, Su's mom thought the troublemaker would finally leave, and breathed a sigh of relief. Who would have thought the grandmother would turn her sights on her own grandson, wanting Su Bai to marry her instead? Of course, the entire Su family vehemently opposed the idea. Su's mom was so furious she couldn't even eat. But the grandmother wouldn't listen, and stubbornly pushed for their union. Unable to persuade his grandmother, Su Bai directly confronted Su Zhaokei, but that only made her more difficult. She threw tantrums, cried, and threatened to end her life multiple times. One day, she suddenly claimed she had let go of the idea, and Su Bai almost believed her. But it turned out her scheming heart hadn't died at all. The way he recounted the story, she sounded like a delicate white lotus, wronged by the world. And in the end, she even took the opportunity to reaffirm her loyalty. "Nuenoan, trust me," she said. "I'm pure, from my body to my soul. I belong entirely to you. Who cares?" I let out a scoffing laugh and gently nudged him away. The image of Su Zhaokei's overly dramatic, coy face popped into my head again, and I felt a wave of disgust. This issue needed to be resolved. She was like a ticking time bomb. Who knew when she'd jump out again? "Don't worry, leave this to my mom," Su Bai said as he smirked. "I'll play support from the side." He gave a mischievous smile, planted a kiss on my cheek, and added, "Just relax and prepare to become Mrs. Su." "Who cares about being Mrs. Su?" I scoffed. "I just can't stand the thought of someone else eyeing the meat in my bowl." We went to pick out some clothes, and also grabbed the gifts we'd prepared for his family. When we arrived at the Su family villa, I felt a bit uneasy. Su Bai patted his chest confidently, with an "I've got everything under control" look, which was somewhat reassuring. The moment the door opened, Su's mom greeted us with a radiant smile, like a blooming flower. Su's dad stood a bit awkwardly, but his face was also full of smiles. Su Zhaokei snorted coldly through her nose, while pushing an elderly lady next to her. That must be Su Bai's grandmother. Quickly adapting to the situation, I gave a sweet and polite greeting. "Hello, uncle, auntie, grandma." Sue's dad and mom's smiles grew even wider, but the grandmother didn't even lift her head, frowning as she fiddled with her phone. There was no doubt Su Zhaokei must have whispered some poison in her ear. Sue's mom, noticing my awkwardness, hurriedly explained, "Your grandma's getting older. Her hearing isn't great anymore. Don't take it too hard." But just as she finished speaking, the grandmother's voice boomed like a bell, loud and clear. "Who said my hearing isn't good?" How was I supposed to respond to that? The atmosphere turned a bit awkward. Sue's mom gave me a quick glance, signaling me not to take it seriously. She warmly held my hand, guiding me to sit at the dining table. "Zinuan, you must be hungry. Auntie cooked today herself and made all your favorite dishes." Su Zhaokei followed us over. She was about to squeeze next to Su Bai, but Su's mom immediately bumped her aside. She pouted, pulled out a chair, and sat beside the grandmother, her little face radiating exaggerated grievance. Sure enough, the grandmother began coddling her, glaring angrily at Su's mom. Su's mom pretended not to notice. We all pretended not to notice. Just as I bit into a shrimp, Su Zhaokei started again. "Brother, I want shrimp too. Give it to me." Can you imagine a 170-pound person speaking in a high-pitched, cutesy voice? Has no one ever told her how grating it sounds? How can I describe it? It's like a mouse stuck in a door crack. You don't want it to survive, but stomping it to death seems excessive. Yet you don't want it to die too quickly, because that would be too merciful. Su Bai didn't even lift an eyelid, dumping all the peeled shrimp into my bowl. "I'm busy taking care of my wife," he said. "I don't have time for you, little sister. You're so biased. You were never like this before." "Here it comes. Here she goes again." Su's mom coldly interrupted. "Zhaokei, as a man, your brother is supposed to care for his wife. It's his duty. You're not missing an arm or a leg. I'm not expecting you to accomplish great things, but surely you can feed yourself, right? If you're really envious, go find yourself a boyfriend. Stop meddling all the time." "I'm not meddling. It's just that there's suddenly a stranger in the house, and I'm not used to it yet." "Stranger, open your eyes wide and look carefully. I'm the one marrying your brother." Su Bai fed me a shrimp, then lazily turned and said, "Well, you'd better get used to it quickly. In a few years, there might be 2 or 3 more around here." "Right, wife?" I almost choked, but he quickly patted my back to help. This mother and son duo, with their back and forth, could truly drive someone mad. Su Zhaokei bit down hard on a rib, choosing to swallow her anger. "The 8 characters haven't even been written yet," she muttered. "Why is he already calling her wife?" The grandmother suddenly chimed in, her words layered with meaning. She glanced at me and said, "Mu Bai is still young. Dating is fine. But marriage, that's too soon." "Not too soon." Su Bai abruptly stood up, startling me. "Grandma, it's not early at all. I'm in a hurry. We've been together for 4 years. I'm about to turn 27. He seemed to realize what he was implying, and my face flushed red with embarrassment. I slapped his leg in protest. He winced, then grabbed my hand in his. At least he still had a shred of shame. But in the end, he stubbornly added, "Grandma, I'm in a hurry." I almost wished I could summon the Civil Affairs Bureau right then and there. Su's dad chimed in as well. "I think Zinuan is great. She's more than a perfect match for Mu Bai." Saying such things in front of me, was that really appropriate? The whole family smiled at me, creating a slightly eerie scene. I kept my head down, shoveling rice into my mouth like a whirlwind, though my heart was blooming with joy. The meal turned out to be a delightful experience for me. As for whether everyone else enjoyed it, that wasn't my concern. After the meal, I brought out the gifts I had prepared. For Su's dad, I had a box of tea leaves. For Su's mom, I bought a beauty device. Both of them were overjoyed and immediately handed me to big red envelopes. Meanwhile, Su Zhaokei munched on an apple, wandering around with a sour expression. What kind of garbage are you even gifting? Take it back. Our family doesn't collect trash. I froze for a moment, feeling flustered. It was true that the gifts I prepared weren't luxurious. The tea leaves were grown by my father himself, a variety called orchid fragrance. The beauty device was something I'd saved up for months to afford. Compared to the Su family standards, they were indeed modest, but they were the most valuable gifts I could possibly give. After all, I'm just the daughter of a tea farmer. I've always been aware of the vast economic gap between Su-bai and me. At one point, I even thought about giving up on this relationship. It was Su-bai's unwavering commitment that brought us this far. At that moment, Su-bai had stepped into the restroom. Su's dad was in the study, so no one was there to back me up, which left me feeling a bit hurt. Su's mom came over carrying a glass of water. Just in time to overhear the conversation, she reached out and gave Su Xiaokei a shove. Su Xiaokei, are you that bored? It's not like the gift is for you. What does it have to do with you anyway? Whatever my daughter-in-law gives me, I like it. She poured me a glass of plain water, and it tastes sweet to me. You just can't stop running your mouth, can you? The grandmother's cane tapped loudly on the floor. A little favor and you're already bought off? Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. I suddenly remembered I hadn't given the grandmother her gift yet. Hurriedly, I pulled a small speaker from my bag. Grandma, this is for you. Before the grandmother could respond, Su Xiaokei cut in again. It's just a cheap little speaker. How can you even have the nerve to gift something like this? She called me by my full name. She used to at least call me sister, even if it was just to pretend I was older. Now she couldn't even be bothered to act. Thank goodness she was born with only one mouth. If she had any more, she'd drive everyone insane. Grandma, it is a small speaker, I said with a smile as I leaned close to her ear, but I've already preloaded it for you. 2,000 of the most popular online novels right now. The grandmother's expression instantly softened, her lips curling into a smile, though she tried to mask it with pride. Su-bai appeared just in time. Glancing briefly at the speaker, he immediately understood and added, Grandma, knew anyone prepared this especially for you. All you have to do is press this button here. Domineering CEO falls for me. Exclusive sweet wife, flash marriage husband to overbearing. You can listen to any of these novels as much as you like. If you don't like them, I can always gift the speaker to Grandma's son next door. No, who said I don't want it? The grandmother ignored Su Xiaokei, whose face was growing darker with frustration, and snatched the speaker away. Su-bai and I clasped hands tightly, sharing a triumphant smile. Mission accomplished! One step closer to happiness. Aside from Su Xiaokei, Su-bai's family seemed to be quite pleased with me. After our parents met, the engagement was officially planned. But on the day of the engagement, Su Xiaokei pulled another stunt. She showed up in a dress identical to mine. This woman had already ruined my proposal, and now she was here to ruin my engagement as well. She was like a haunting ghost that wouldn't go away. I couldn't hold back anymore. My silent praise for her audacity could no longer express the depth of my anger. I exploded on the spot. Su Xiaokei, get it straight. Today is my engagement to your brother. Dressing like this. Did your brain switch places with your intestines? They say there's no limit to shamelessness, and it's true. But Su Xiaokei completely ignored my fury, flitting like a butterfly over to Su-bai. Brother, who's prettier, me or her? Who do you like more? Isn't this a no-brainer? If you can read, kindly check the sign by the entrance. It clearly says, Engagement Ceremony of Mr. Su-bai and Miss Song Si-nuan. The letters are huge. Are you blind? But she seemed completely unaware of her actions. Her round body forced into a dress that didn't fit, with rolls of fat around her waist, looking just like the uneven edges of a baked naan. Subai pulled his hand away instantly. Before he could even speak, Su's mom grabbed a glass of red wine and splashed it onto her. The pristine white dress was instantly stained with bright red blotches. Either change immediately or leave this place at once. Stop embarrassing yourself here. Wow, I was so shocked my jaw almost dropped. This was way too bold. This future mother-in-law is a powerhouse. Su Zhaokei, with tears brimming in her eyes, clung to Su Bai's arm and refused to let go, her face now a pitiful mess. Brother, we grew up together, she pleaded. No one knows you better than I do. No one loves you more than I do. I truly love you. Look at me. Look at me, I'm the one most suited to be your wife. You said when we were kids that you'd marry me. Her tears smudging her eyeliner, left to black streaks running down her face. Well, it seems she's finally said what's truly in her heart, no longer hiding behind the guise of being just a sister. Was this a declaration of war? I cracked my knuckles, feeling an inexplicable sense of excitement. Su's mom charged forward first, pulling her away without hesitation. Zhaokei, there are some things I've told you many times before, but clearly you haven't listened at all. Su Bai doesn't like you. He's always seen you as a sister. Your dad and I have treated you like our own daughter. We've never wronged you all these years. But if you continue to push your luck, don't blame me for forgetting old ties if you keep this up. Su Zhaokei cried even harder, wailing. It doesn't have to be me. But why does it have to be Song Xinyuan? She's nothing but a gold digger. Her family is dirt poor. She's only with my brother because of our money. Don't be fooled by her sweet-talking lies. Stop it, Su Zhaokei. Don't make baseless accusations. If anything, it was your brother's sweet talk that fooled me, wasn't it? I was speechless, gaining a newfound understanding of the sheer thickness of her skin. Su's mom suddenly slapped her across the face. Oddly enough, it felt satisfying to watch. What should I do? I kind of wanted to try it myself. Zhaokei, get it straight. Your own parents were farmers too. Where did you get this sense of superiority from? How did eating a few full meals at the Su family's table make you forget your roots? Xinyuan's family might be ordinary, but she's never wallowed in self-pity. She's hardworking, driven, and ambitious. Whether it's her academic achievements or her interpersonal skills, she outshines you by a mile in every way. A girl like her, there's nothing she won't accomplish in the future. Of course, I want someone like her as my daughter-in-law. Su's mom turned to look at me with a warm smile. My eyes started to well up, almost crying on the spot. As for you, Zhaokei, the Su family gave you the best opportunities. If you had even a sliver of ambition, there's nothing you couldn't achieve. But what have you accomplished? You didn't study well. You can't hold down a job. And you spend your days lazing at home and sleeping and eating. You've already got moderate fatty liver disease. Can't you think about losing some weight? Don't even mention your brother not liking you. If he ever did, I'd break his legs myself. Luckily, he's sensible enough. Su's mom's verbal assault was relentless, completely shutting Su Zhaokei down. She stood there, dazed and helpless, muttering to herself, "No, that's not true. Grandma said, I don't have to do anything. The Su family will take care of me for life. Grandma said it herself. The Su family will support me forever." Who would actually want to be raised like livestock? Su Zhaokei truly embodied greed and stupidity. As the ceremony was about to begin, Su Bai pulled me away. Passing by Su Zhaokei, I leaned close and whispered, "Usually, when pigs are fattened up, it's because they're being saved for the New Year feast. I plan to marry her, not eat her." Su Zhaokei's face froze, and in a flash, a fruit knife appeared in her hand. Su Bai reacted instantly, yanking me away. Su Zhaokei, with a despairing smile, pressed the knife against her wrist. "Brother, if you dare to get engaged today, I'll die right in front of you." What the hell? This woman's absolutely insane. Su Bai frowned deeply, his gaze toward her as cold as ice. Zhaoke, I hate it when people threaten me. Brother, I'm not threatening you. It's because I love you so much. Without you, I really feel like I'd rather die. Her voice was trembling, and
Delicate
she
yet
pressed the
pitiful.
knife harder against her wrist. A red indentation immediately appeared. There was no blood. Oddly enough, I felt a tinge of disappointment, but Subai remained completely unmoved. Your life is yours. If you don't want to live, no one can save you. Sue's mom was already fuming, her face turning pale with anger. Zhaoke, our Su family has raised you for over 20 years, providing you with the best food and care. We have no reason to sacrifice a son for you now. If you don't want to live, we won't stop you. But rest assured, Mom will buy you the most expensive urn and choose the best feng shui spot for your grave. The situation was clearly tense, but I couldn't help wanting to laugh. What to do Su Zhaoke probably didn't expect her dramatic act to be met with this level of indifference. In her frustration, she shouted, Su Bai, your sister is about to die, and you're still focused on getting engaged? Are you even human? If you want to die, what can I do about it? New Anwen, the ceremony is starting soon. Let's go, we shouldn't delay. Completely ignoring her, Subai grabbed my arm and hurriedly ran off. As if ghosts were chasing us, Su's mom followed close behind. No one paid Su Zhaoke any further attention. Are you sure this won't cause any problems? I felt a little uneasy, wanting to turn back and check. But Subai firmly pulled me along. Don't look back, whatever you do, don't look back. If you turn around, she just act even more dramatically. Su's mom patted my shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry, Zinuan, that fruit knife is completely dull. She's just bluffing. This is nothing, just a minor scene. Ignore her. And she stopped soon enough. I was still feeling a bit unsettled, until later. Su Zhaoke reappeared at the banquet, wearing a new outfit. Clearly, I still lacked experience in dealing with shameless opponents. After the engagement ceremony, Su Bai and I moved in together. Not in the Su family villa, but in a small 3-bedroom apartment downtown, conveniently close to my PhD program. Previously, Su Zhaoke would often barge into his room in her pajamas, scaring Su Bai so much that he moved out overnight, without even letting her know where he went. Wife, you have no idea how much I've sacrificed for you, he said dramatically. I recalled Su Zhaoke's overly striking figure and face, thinking maybe the sacrifice wasn't all that big. On the first day after moving in, Su Bai acted like he had been possessed by a hyperactive puppy. While I stayed up late in the study, working on a paper for my advisor, he asked me every minute 8 times in total when I was going to bed. He kept wandering around in light clothing, purposely flaunting himself in front of me. At one point, he even started counting his ABS out loud in my presence, striking provocative poses that made my blood rush. I haven't worked out lately, he lamented. My ABS don't look as good anymore. I gave him an exasperated glare. What do you mean? You still have 8 ABS, clear as ever. He grinned mischievously, leaning closer. Wife, writing papers is exhausting, isn't it? Why don't we play a game to relax? A 2-player game, just the two of us. Before I could respond, my face turned bright red. I instinctively leaned back. The next thing I knew, he scooped me up in a princess carry, running straight into the bedroom. Sub, this game wasn't quick at all. That awful man, such a liar. Our days flowed smoothly and peacefully, except for the mountain of papers I had to write and the endless, creative games Su Bai kept coming up with. I was struggling to keep up. Everything else, though, could be described as perfect. On the weekend, Su Bai and I went back to visit the Su family. As soon as we entered the neighborhood, we saw Su Zhaoke pushing the grandmother in a wheelchair for a walk. The fiasco at the engagement banquet had made Su's mom utterly disgusted with Su Zhaoke. The very next day, she insisted on kicking her out of the house. But the grandmother threatened to go on a hunger strike unless she was allowed to stay. This started a long tug-of-war between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, with the grandmother backing her. Su Xiaoke ultimately wasn't kicked out. Su's mom was so furious she went back to her parents' house. Su's dad had to visit his in-laws every day to sweet-talk his wife into coming back. Eventually, he managed to coax her home. I glanced at Su Xiaoke, sizing her up, and couldn't help but feel a twisted admiration. What kind of dark sorcery had she practiced to cultivate such thick skin? It was beyond comprehension. Meanwhile, the grandmother was hugging the small speaker I had given her, still engrossed in her domineering CEO romance audiobooks, although she hadn't liked me much before. Now that we were officially engaged, she was at least civil on the surface. I smiled and helped her adjust the speaker settings. Her gaze toward me softened just a little. I was feeling pleased, till I looked up and locked eyes with Su Xiaoke's cold, gloomy stare. "Brother, you should go home first," she said ominously. "I have a few words I'd like to say to my sister-in-law." She finally called me sister-in-law. Was this her way of making peace with me? Su Bai spoke coldly. "What can't you say in front of me? And what do you two have to talk about anyway? Brother, what are you afraid of? I'm not going to eat her." I nudged Su Bai's arm, gesturing that it was okay. "Then I'll wait for you at the door," he said. "Come over quickly, all right?" After saying that, Su Bai kissed me lightly and walked away with big strides. Su Xiaoke stared at his back for a long time without speaking. Her gaze was so deeply emotional and lingering that I instantly realized how naive my earlier thoughts were. Su Xiaoke would never give up on Su Bai. She was determined to fight me to the bitter end. Songxi Nuan, you must feel pretty proud right now. You've charmed my brother away. Green tea, green tea. Her tone practically reeked of it. Forced affection isn't sweet, I replied. If your brother doesn't choose you, that's his lack of judgment. The grandmother interjected, glancing at me pointedly. Don't be upset. Grandma will find someone better for you. 100 times better than your brother. But I only like brother. Grandma, you'll help me, won't you? Suddenly, she crouched down, wearing that innocent, angelic smile again. Before I could react, she abruptly pushed the wheelchair forward. The spot she had chosen was a slope. In an instant, the wheelchair slid downhill. Grandma screamed in shock. And then, to everyone's surprise, she jumped out of the wheelchair, moving as briskly as if she were flying. She didn't seem like someone with mobility issues at all. I couldn't understand why she sat in a wheelchair every day. But due to the momentum, she still stumbled forward a few steps and fell to the ground. I was about to help Grandma when Su Xiaoke suddenly grabbed my hair, yanking so hard it felt like my scalp was being torn off. Songxi Nuan, even if you don't like Grandma, you can't push her. This idiot! Both stupid and malicious. I struggled to turn around, raising two fingers and aiming straight for her eye sockets. That made her let go, but she kept yelling crazily behind me. Su Bai walked over, grabbing her firmly. I quickly checked on Grandma. The elderly lady had already gotten up on her own, sitting on the steps by the roadside, hugging her knees. Her face was pale as a sheet, and she seemed slightly injured. Su Xiaoke, like a rabid dog, lunged forward again. Grandma, tell them. It was Songxi Nuan who pushed you. Say it. Grandma looked at her blankly, then turned to look at me. Su Xiaoke, you ungrateful wretch, must have been blind. Without Grandma backing her up, Su Xiaoke instantly lost her footing. That very afternoon, the Su family packed up all her belongings and dumped them at the doorstep. Su's mom insisted on calling the police, but Grandma refused. Just kick her out of this house. I never want to see her again in this lifetime. Su Xiaoke knelt in front of Grandma, refusing to get up. You said you'd help me marry brother. You said you'd help me. Why are you going back? On your word now? You said the Su family would take care of me for life. You said I could learn anything if I wanted, and forget about it if I didn't. So why is everyone accusing me now? Saying I'm useless, saying I'm a waste of space. Why? Su's mom slapped her twice, cutting her off. Su Xiaokei, stop wasting everyone's time here. If it weren't for Grandma, you would have starved to death a long time ago. The only reason you're still alive today. Su Xiaokei held her swollen cheek, glaring daggers at me. Songsi Nuan, it's all your fault. You took my brother from me, my mom and dad, and now even Grandma is on your side. I'm going to kill you. She lunged at me, trying to grab my hair again. But this time, I struck first, kicking her squarely in the stomach. The doorbell rang. When we opened the door, it was the police. Who called the cops? Su's mom stepped forward. It was me. She pointed at Su Xiaokei, looking at her with sheer disdain. This fatty tried to kill my mother-in-law, and even framed my daughter-in-law. She met Grandma's angry eyes directly and said, "We've done our duty raising her. Whatever debts of gratitude there were, they've been repaid in full. And now she turns around and bites the hand that fed her. She's worse than a dog. If we don't teach her a lesson now, who knows what she'd do in the future?" Desperately, Su Xiaokei turned to Grandma, crying and shouting, "Grandma, say something. You can't let them take me away. You love me the most. Say something, please." But Grandma didn't say a word. She simply closed the door in silence. The atmosphere in the Su family seemed to turn sweet. Su's mom hummed songs while cooking and even while taking a bath. She looked at Su's dad with a newfound tenderness in her eyes. Su Bai and I also moved back into the family home. Only Grandma remained pensive and quiet. Having lived her life fiercely protective of her family, she never imagined raising an ungrateful Volve in her midst. The betrayal had dealt her a heavy blow. Perhaps out of embarrassment, she started clamoring to move into a retirement home. Ultimately, Su's dad convinced her to stay. As for my marriage to Su Bai, the plans were finally underway. This time, with no interference from Su Xiaokei, everything went incredibly smoothly. I walked down the aisle in a pure white wedding gown, step by step, toward the man I loved. Su Bai gazed at me with deep affection, his eyes brimming with tears. In that moment, I was completely overwhelmed by happiness. That night, I went back to working on my paper. Su Bai sat beside me with a book, quietly keeping me company. In the stillness of the study, all I could hear were our breathing and heartbeats. I glanced up at Su Bai's sharp profile, feeling a wave of emotion. In these past years with him, I had never abandoned myself because of his love. I refused to be a clinging vine dependent on him. I wanted to be a tree, standing beside him, weathering life's storms together. This is something someone like Su Xiaokei could probably never understand in her lifetime. Su Bai put his book down and leaned over with a playful smile. "Wife, what are you thinking about instead of focusing on your work?" I boldly met his gaze, smiling as I said, "I'm thinking about you." Delighted, he jumped up and wrapped me in his arms. "You're so easily distracted. Your punishment is to research the latest games with me." This man is unbelievably good at turning things around. I'm exhausted. That's the end of the story. Time to play.